This bites. Your commercial's stupid, you're a no-talent hack, and your donuts are stale. I'm out of here. Fast, fast, fast.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. And last week we started our fixing characters kind of segment that Joe and I are going to be working on, until we're out of characters to try and fix. And obviously we started out with Captain Marvel, a more modern take on the Captain Marvel character with Carol Danvers as the Captain Marvel persona. Had a lot of fun doing that. Today we're going to talk about, another legacy character, Wally West from DC Comics, and maybe some of the issues with that character and where he kind of fell off along the way. Kind of identify the issues, how I would fix him, how Joe would fix Wally West. Now it's completely like the issues with Wally West are completely different than Captain Marvel. It's like apples and oranges, so it should be fun to do this. So we're gonna have to have completely different ideas, thinking outside of the box to kind of give Wally West some TLC and hopefully get him back to where he's a good character and everyone's enjoying reading him. Obviously, here with me to talk about that is independent writer, independent editor, award-winning editor, and soon to be, you got Beckstar coming out from Mad Cave Studios. Joe Corallo, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm glad that you could come back. You wanted to come back, even though I think most people know by now, if you watch the video, you didn't think my heel turn for Captain Marvel was as genius as I was, but I probably should have laid it out a little bit better. So I've done a little bit more thinking about exactly how I want to save Wally West. It's interesting thinking about saving Wally West, because really, if you think about the character as constructed and the people's reception to the character, he's not really broken.
No, he certainly wasn't for a long time. He was really great. The new Teen Titans with Marv Wolfman, George Perez for a long time. I mean, obviously before that, but I think a lot of people really love that run, and how Wally was in that, kind of being the anchor for the team, where everyone else, either their parents were, or at least one of their parents were either dead or or a villain, or their sibling was a villain, or something like that. Wally had a normal family. There'd be moments where he's, like at the dinner table, like with his family, and he's like worried about trying to make sure he can get his homework done, while also being like a superhero. He was really one of the most relatable characters on that team. And, then when he took on the mantle of the Flash after Crisis, he ended up being, a guy with a lot of heart. People really fondly remember a lot of those stories.
In many ways, he kind of outshined Barry Allen. When Barry Allen left, I think a lot of people at the time were kind of glad. He was kind of a boring character, not a lot going on for him. It felt like Wally reestablished the Flash as a really important superhero at DC Comics, and something that was kind of must read. And it's too bad. It almost feels like bringing Barry Allen back in Flash Rebirth, which I love that story from Jeff Johns.
Sure.
Might have been the beginning, of him kind of unraveling in the DC universe.
It's a shame, because Jeff Johns, in a lot of ways, was that character's was like Wally's like greatest champion and also his greatest nemesis by reintroducing Barry. But like even before that, obviously before we started recording, we mentioned how important Mark Waid was to the mythos of Flash, and he was doing that before Jeff with the introduction of the Speed Force and things like that. And before Mark, you had Bill Loebs, and Bill Loebs is really the writer who started giving a lot of like heart to the character. You had like issue 53 where you had the Pied Piper come out as gay. You had like that sort of his like sort of friendship with the Pied Piper explored in, at that point, what was considered groundbreaking. It actually got Bill Loebs the first GLAAD award for a comics writer ever, was because of that. And then you had the issue after that, 54, Nobody Dies, classic. I mean, it's hard to find a more clear example of a true hero than Nobody Dies. If you haven't read Nobody Dies, it's a one and done story. Read it. This, to some people, this is not going to sound like an endorsement, but trust me, it is. Tom King, when he took over Batman, that first issue with the plane coming down by Gotham, and that was
talking to Alfred.
That plane, that whole incident was a homage to the Flash story, Nobody Dies. You know, Tom King had said that himself. I'm not, you know, hypothesizing that. But, you know, it's such a great story where the Flash risks his life because he doesn't know if he can save this person falling from this plane. And he doesn't consider that. He just does it. And, you know, he saves this person's life. You know, Nobody Dies. It's the title of the story. Nobody Dies, that issue. And it's so just beautiful and stands for everything a superhero can be. You know, that was like, you know, Wally West doing things that, like, you know, it's more heroic than Superman in a lot of ways, because Superman, when he does stuff, he knows usually that he's going to be all right. This was Wally risking his life to save someone, doing something he had never even tried doing before.
I'm glad you brought up Superman, because, like, if you think about the DC universe, it's kind of all grounded in hope in many ways, and Superman is that aspirational symbol of hope, like of what we should all aspire to be, whereas Wally West, while being a symbol of hope, is the relatable symbol of hope, the everyman that has problems, and you've seen growing up, you know, in the DC universe, idolizing his uncle, taking over the mantle, and, you know, and accepting the burden and the challenges. Even, yes, he has the Speed Force, but, you know, there is doubt in there, and you know, he knows what happened to Barry Allen. He knows the sacrifice he had to make, and him accepting that. So he's almost the relatable symbol of hope within the DC universe. Yeah,
no, absolutely. You know, and he's always had like a really good, you know, supporting cast of characters. The Rogues were made iconic, you know, really starting from like Bill Lowe's, but they continued to be through Mark Waid, and I think it all came, you know, sort of like all crescendoed under Jeff Johns. Zoom. You know, I mean, you know, just iconic villain. Anyone who's some of the only people who will have an argument with you about if Batman's villains are the best or not are Flash fans.
Yeah, Reverse Flash, Zoom. You even have Godspeed. Obviously, he came in later, but that's more a Barry Allen thing. But yeah, all great, wonderful villains. So, you want to talk about the three big problems I see with Flash, or you want to talk about kind of the modern stuff that has been literally the undoing of the character?
You know, I feel like so many of the problems with Wally in particular are from some very recent things that have happened that I'm sure a lot of people who have been watching your channel are aware of at least some of them, but maybe we could just run down at least a few instances recently in the past few years on why there's a lot of problems for Wally lately.
So the first big problem I see with Wally West is the character it feels like cannon fodder now. When you need somebody that's going to be a fall guy, where he's going to turn evil, maybe kill a bunch of people, Wally West is your go-to guy. Obviously, Heroes in Crisis, you know, I believe that one's supposed to be in continuity, and Future State feels like it's in future continuity. And we've seen him essentially, you know, mass murder, you know, specifically in Future State. In Heroes in Crisis, you could say that was an accident, although the cover-up was pretty evil in of itself.
Oh, sure.
So I don't know why this has happened, where it seems like DC has a problem with legacy characters in general, and that there's two that seem to get the worst treatment. Although, you know, maybe we'll get some argument with that one, but I would say Roy Harper and Wally West, but it feels like Wally West gets it the worst.
Wally seems to, and you know, there were times where maybe you could have made the argument, but I feel like, especially after Future State, it's hard to make an argument that Roy Harper has it worse than Wally. You know, just that reinforcing all that awful stuff is just like it's at this point it's like farcical. You know?
Yeah, being in Heroes in Crisis, you literally saw them put handcuffs on him and walked away as like like Superman was watching on, and Barry Allen as he was being taken to prison, for murder. I can't imagine like a worse. Just remembering the panel in my head, it's like heartbreaking that they would do that to the character, and he wasn't framed. He did it.
No, I mean that whole thing was just a nightmare. Oh God, it's just awful. And then it's like you don't even understand why. It almost feels like, what if what they did to like Jean Grey and like the Dark Phoenix saga persisted for like years?
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, she's still the Dark Phoenix? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. No.
Yeah, obviously that was reinforced in Future State, which I thought was awful. Now I'd say the second biggest obstacle absolutely ties into that, but it goes back further. They've been trying to get rid of Wally West for a long time. Originally they had him leave with his family, and he was replaced by Bard Allen. That did not work. Then in the New 52, they kind of they kind of zapped him out of existence and replaced him with, I think, Wallace West, right? But then it turned out that was his cousin or his nephew and stuff. So they've been trying to get rid of the character for so long, and then finally in DC Rebirth, the real Wally West returns.
Yeah.
It feels like you got the character back, and he's playing this enormous part in this Dr. Manhattan Button story arc that's clearly one of the driving forces of DC Rebirth and leading to the future of whatever Jeff Johns has planned. They go away from that. He gets removed from Doomsday Clock. It felt like he was a big part of that as well. And then you get Heroes in Crisis. Then you kind of get a redemptive story arc with Flash Forward, where he's going through the multiverse and he's saving these, different multiverses from evil, kind of trying to redeem himself. You get into Dark Knight's Death Metal. Scott Snyder kind of undoes all that and says that it was stupid, in effect, in a line of dialogue. So, anytime, I believe in what they're doing in Flash Forward. No, that was stupid. We're going to undo that. Then you get to Future State. Turns out, he's going to be a mass murderer till the end of times. And at what point, of course, fans are going to start losing hope. You can't keep trusting DC and the creators and coming back to this character just to have the same thing happen over and over, where you just end up losing faith, not only in the character, but in the publisher.
Yeah. It's so upsetting. Like, they did this to Hal, but then Hal recovered and it's fine. They didn't go and double and triple down and constantly have Hal become this villainous character over and over again. Wally never needed this level of deconstruction because he was beloved and he was interesting, and people enjoyed it. Unless there's contradictory evidence that the sales were horrendous during Jeff Johns' run or something like that, which I don't believe was the case. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. He didn't need that level of destruction. In a lot of ways, he was like the Peter Parker of the DC universe. He was this, younger character who loved being a hero and would take, stupid risks because, maybe he didn't know any better, and maybe he just wanted to do the right thing. And then they keep doing these awful things to him. And I mean, they've done that to Peter too, but not like this. This is just almost, it's like sadistic,
And it's detrimental to the bottom line of DC Comics in what they're trying to do. There's an entire generation of readers, maybe two generations of DC Comics readers. Wally West was their Flash. there's also another generation of DC fans that discovered the character through like Young Justice in some of the cartoons where that was their Flash. And when they come back over to the DC universe, that's their favorite character. Of course, that's going to drive them away. You can do these things every now and again, but you have to have a plan to bring them back. But you could tell with Heroes in Crisis, what they've done with Future State, there was never a plan. They just wanted to do it.
Yeah, no, it's that plan, and it's one of the more negative aspects of the like 21st century DC when it started getting really dark, for the sake of being dark in some areas. The same era that gave us things like Identity Crisis and whatnot. This overcorrection of DC's too colorful and too fun. So let's make everyone, irredeemable murderers and whatnot. It's been sad to see a lot of that. And I think some aspects of the DC universe, of course, corrected a bit, and others haven't. Wally being one of them. And it does, after a while, come off as, oh, I guess, is this personal? Because it really doesn't make any sense. And, I'm just pointing this out. I'm not trying to start a conspiracy theory or get people to like agree on this being a point or not. I do think it's interesting that both Hal Jordan and Wally West are Republicans in the DC universe, and Hal becomes a genocidal maniac, and Wally West becomes a mass murderer, and like just stuff like that. Like I'm not saying if that was a reason any of that happened or not, but it is interesting when these things happen the way they do.
Well, I think the Hal Jordan thing almost feels more like an anomaly. Although, obviously they got rid of Barry Allen, in Crisis on Infinite Earths. But like, if you look at the DC Rebirth Titans series, you got Dick Grayson, shot in the head, lost his memory, becomes a shell of himself. Obviously, he's come back, but so they kind of ruined Nightwing. You had Wally West. We know he became a murderer. He killed his good friend, Roy Harper Arsenal, who was also a member of the Titans. I believe Donna Troy became one of the infected. That's the last time we saw her. So she was, one of the Batman Who Loves puppets. And then I think Garth, the last time we saw him, he was an alcoholic. The entire team. I think they just hate legacy characters.
Yeah, I don't know what, like, it's very lazy. It's the only way to make a character interesting is to make their lives as horrible as possible. Sometimes that kind of stuff works. Obviously we've talked in the past about stuff like, Born Again, but it's not, it's a lazy fix of just like, oh, let's boost sales and make this character interesting by just making their life a train wreck.
Born Again almost feels like a lot of that stuff is part of the fabric of Hell's Kitchen.
Sure.
Like being the hero of Hell's Kitchen, that means you kind of literally have to go through hell on Earth, at least, to survive. Where that's not really part of the DC universe. And I'll just say this: if you're a Kyle Rayner fan, thank your lucky stars. For some reason, they haven't decided to destroy that character. For some reason, but every other legacy character gets.
Well, I'm looking forward to you using that clip in a few months from now when something inevitably now happens to Kyle Rayner, but...
Well, we haven't seen anything in Infinite Frontier so far. It feels like they forgot the character.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? So the last thing, I guess, obstacle for the character, the problem with the character now, and I personally don't see this one. It's obviously something DC sees with the character. Is there room for two Flash characters? The Flash family in and of itself is enormous. It's one of the byproducts of when time travel becomes a part of the fabric of that power that they're wielding with the Speed Force, where you have all these characters coming back in time and the family gets bigger, bigger, bigger. Eventually, some people are going to, bond with the character. They're going to want to see the character come back, and you start keeping bringing them all back, but you keep creating new Flash characters, and eventually becomes unsustainable. But apparently you can't have two characters called Flash. I don't get it, but apparently it seems to be an obstacle for DC.
I don't get it. They don't have a problem having two characters called Spider-Man at Marvel. I don't see any reason why you can't have two characters called Flash in the DC universe. But yeah, these are just problems when you don't have a strong enough editorial hand and you allow people to keep or too strong of an editorial hand, where you keep having creative teams come in and try to revitalize a brand by adding new characters to it. And a lot of times,
redundant characters. It's the same characters over and over with a new name.
Yeah, and look, I get the impulse to do that, but it's you don't need that. It's like tell good stories with these characters, and we've talked about and criticized certain gimmicks before, and variant cover gimmicks are a problem, but it's also a gimmick to add new characters sometimes.
First
sometimes
appearance, got to bump the sales.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of that, like that's a problem, and this problem then leads to these bloated lines with too many characters. And then they have to figure out how to remove or kill characters off and do that. And too often they make too many characters and then decide the best way to handle it is to kill them off. And then it doesn't matter anyway, because whenever someone new comes on and wants to use them, they figure out a way to bring them back anyway. So
do you think one of DC's problems with Wally West is in the time when Barry Allen sacrificed himself and he was gone until the time he came back, in many ways, Wally West kind of exceeded his popularity and importance to the DC universe? So you can't have Wally West standing next to Barry Allen, maybe without making Barry Allen or making people realize that Barry Allen maybe is less than Wally West in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree. I think because they got to play with Wally for so long on his own, he really got to become this very strong hero. And he was the Flash for a generation, if not two generations of fans. I mean, he was basically the Flash for what, about 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
So it was fixing a problem that didn't necessarily need fixing in that way. I do understand, at least when it came to Green Lantern, this might have been the case with Flash, but like when Jeff Johns was taking Green Lantern over and bringing Hal back, a lot of that was because, the shine on Kyle Rayner and what they were doing was, diminishing, and the sales were starting to dip, and it was done as a way to revitalize the line. I don't know if that was necessary for Flash, going back to a previous point. But even with, Green Lantern, maybe that wasn't necessary. And you could have done these stories.
Plenty of Green Lantern characters ready to be explored. John Stewart still hasn't been fully explored, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, these were kind of problems that these weren't the solutions that were necessary, but these were the ones they went with. And it was, I think, short-term thinking, because now it's sort of made everything a lot more complex, and it comes off to me like the original thoughts of bringing back people like Hal and Barry were not necessarily thought through properly, and now these lines have all gotten weaker as a result, a decade or so out than they would have been otherwise.
Well, you just think about Hal Jordan had a definitive ending to his story when he became Parallax and then redeemed himself, saving the world. Yeah. Barry Allen had a definitive ending to his run as a superhero when he saved the world, in Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah.
So, probably didn't need to bring him back. But we've talked about Wally West and kind of how we got here and the issues with the character. Now it's time to fix the character. Let's save Wally West. Because I think you and I both agree he's a character worth saving. The character is not really the problem. I think it's the creative direction and the execution and the ideas that they've come up with the character, and maybe some of the reasons that they've tried to maybe downplay his importance. The first thing I would do, and they won't do this when this was pie in the sky, but if they could create an Ultimate style universe where they could take Barry Allen and some of these other legacy characters that don't fit in maybe in the regular DC continuity, move them over there, and you can have an alternate reality where Barry Allen is your Flash, maybe Kyle Rayner's your Green Lantern, and you can get some of these characters that maybe they don't appreciate so much. Maybe you can get, Donna Troy is Wonder Woman over there, and you have your own Ultimate style universe. I think that would be brilliant. They're not going to do that, unfortunately. That's a pie in the sky dream on my behalf. So if we can't do that, let's try and work with what DC has given us. Now, this will also be difficult because of the very last pages of DC's Dark Knight's Death Metal, where we saw, I think, Wally West ended up on the far side of the moon on some secret base overlooking the multiverse. But I'm going to pretend, my headcanon is going to pretend that didn't happen. They never addressed Wally West. So this is what I had. What I personally would do. This is fanfic right here. This is what I think would be a good way to save the character. So you have Roy Harper and Wally West reconnect. We know Roy Harper's back. They reconnect. They kind of talk about what happened. Wally tells Roy what happened. Hey man, this happened. You died during the explosion. I feel terrible. Roy forgives him. He explains to him, hey, I had this moment where I covered things up. They took me off to prison. I don't know what I'm going to do. And Roy's like, listen, we need to go to the Justice League. We need to let them know, how you feel about this and apply for reinstatement or whatever you'd want to term it and see if they'll forgive you and let you have a seat at the table again. And when he goes in there, Barry Allen would like to do it, but ultimately the Justice League says, you know what happened at Sanctuary is unforgivable. You covered up your crimes. You're lucky you're not in prison anymore, with everything that's happened. We can't give you a seat back at the table in the Justice League. And, Wally West takes his Flash uniform. He throws it on the ground and he says, you know what? You're right. I'm walking away. I don't, deserve the legacy of this mantle. Walks away with Roy Harper. And we get a buddy story with Roy Harper and Wally West going to a new city, anywhere but San Francisco, because that is the curse of death for any character to go to San Francisco to revitalize a character. Maybe we send them to the Outback, but we get a redemption arc where Roy and Wally were together, becoming superheroes, redeeming themselves. Eventually they'll get the notice of the Justice League. Superman will come in and obviously forgive them first. The last character to forgive them will be Batman. But along the way, Roy gets a new identity where he's not the Flash anymore. There are no good speed-related superhero names, unfortunately, left. The best I could come up with was Glimmer. Another one that would fit the character just as far as what the character symbolizes, I thought would be Penance. Obviously, that is an X-Men. And then another one I thought maybe would be good would be Catalyst. I think that's also a superhero name. So I got to do more research and find a better name. But I think eventually Wally West gets a new superhero identity, but gets accepted once again and forgiven fully from the Justice League, just like Hal Jordan did after he proves himself on like a 2-year journey with Roy Harper, who's also trying to get some redemption.
Yeah, no, I mean, that sounds, you do that as like a 2 or 3 year sort of run with, Wally and Roy together. There's something there. You're also providing direction for the character, both characters, and I think that's been lacking and is what gets us into these insane situations. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a solid idea.
Yeah, get some space away between Roy and Barry Allen. Let him become his own hero. Yes, he still had speed powers, but we'll give him a new name, give him a new identity, and they can forgive him. And you're also acknowledging what he did in Heroes in Crisis was wrong, but it's not irredeemable.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was my thinking on this one. Now, obviously, I am a schlub. I did think about this one more than my Captain Marvel heel turn. So I put a little bit more thought into the process that you could get something more redemptive for the character. Mm-hmm. You, sir, are a professional writer. You probably have a much better idea than I do. How would you save Wally West?
I mean, this is a difficult situation. I think what you proposed is one of the better things you can do with that. Really, one of the only other options you have when it comes to someone like Wally is you just punt it with the reboot and just you don't care how bad the excuse is that you're moving on, and you just start from day one. You gotta one more day it. You gotta cosmic
Wally
cubes
West
happen.
wakes up on a beach with no memory of what's happened.
The real Wally West was found at the bottom of Jamaica Bay. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta, it's like, just doesn't matter how stupid it is. People aren't, people forgive that.
Hey.
You just go right into the new stories.
People might not remember this, but your new 52 Superman doesn't exist anymore. They just left him in the past and they moved on. They added a new Superman. You might not even have realized it.
Yeah, exactly. It's that same thing. It's I love making the Newhart reference, but you just have like Wally West just wakes up in bed next to like Linda Park, and it just turns out that it's just another day from the Flash in like somewhere in and really anywhere from like issue like 20 all the way through Jeff Johns' run, just anywhere in there you want, just wakes up and goes like, wow, that was some dream. I'm going to go back to being the Flash. And you just, whatever it takes. Just...
You know what's interesting? With the new thing that DC has implemented, the Omniverse, where everything matters, so technically nothing matters, you could do that within the rules and framework of continuity as we know it in DC Comics. It would work.
Yeah. If they can make Superman movies that ignore other Superman movies, if Marvel found out a way to just act like X-Men Origins Wolverine never happened, like you can do these things. Just
hey,
whatever the hard reset button is, take it. I'm telling you.
Was encased in adamantium, which is indestructible once it sets. One day, the statue was open. Wolverine was back. We don't know why. How did that happen? They never said. It just happened.
So I'm telling you, DC, right now, you don't have to give me any explanation. Just act like none of this stuff happened. I'll go with it.
That's where the headcanon by omission happens. Heroes in Crisis didn't happen. He wasn't even in Dark Knight's death metal.
Yeah.
That was another fake one because we did see a fake Wally West at the end of the story, right?
Yeah. All of this was, an illusion created by Cersei. All of this was a nightmare put upon Wally by Dr. Psycho. I don't care. I really don't.
Pirate.
Yes, Psycho Pirate. Sure. Anything. All of this is, Wally West wakes up and he pulls a syringe out of his arm, and it turns out that the Scarecrow injected him with so much fear toxin that he had a several years long nightmare going on in his head about murdering his friends. And now he's back and ready to go. Whatever. I don't care. Just do it.
So you think they've dug such a deep hole that, whatever they decide to do to get out of it, it's probably worth it, even if it doesn't make sense.
I would rather at this point, and I hate making these kind of suggestions. There are very few characters I would make this for. Wally is one of the few that they have done such a horrendous job of handling that at this point it's just hit the escape button. Just get us out of here and move on.
I agree, because I was sitting there thinking, I was like, how do you get out of this? It's like, well, he is Wally West. There's a time travel effect, but if he goes back and undoes it, they got the butterfly effect. Maybe he makes everything worse. Like, how do you make it? It's like, I think you just have to have him go up to the Justice League and be like, yes, I murdered people. Can you forgive me? And then be like, no, we can't.
Yeah.
Go fix yourself.
Yeah, because he's done so...
Because it would take years to do it, though. You're right. Like, it would take him like 2 or 3 years to finally do enough to where you'd be like, yeah, he proved himself again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's either that or just just waking
Kill
up.
the character off and bring him back in 5 years.
Yeah, just I don't even. It's like I don't care. You don't even have to wait. You could just come out with a new Wally West #1 tomorrow, and just act like none of this happened and keep going.
After our conversation about the Cosmic Cube and Captain America, you are advocating bringing the Cosmic Cube into the DC universe,
mm-hmm.
and having a Cosmic Cube Wally West, and the other Wally West is still in prison.
Whatever it takes to get a good Wally West story at this point. Whatever it takes, just do it.
I think a lot of people agree with you. I don't think at this point you would get any pushback. Obviously you would. You read the comments on the channel. Anytime you say something that doesn't make complete sense in continuity, somebody's going to have to say something. But it's one person. The vast majority of people are just be like, thank God. I don't have, put that in the rear view. Just don't make him a murderer for the next 10 years. Before you do it again. I think it would be like the sweet relief. Just like
it would be. It's like just end it, please.
What did Jesse Snyder say on the interview I did with him? He wants to write Wally West, the world's fastest humanitarian. Do it.
Sure.
If that's what you need to do, go send him off and let him be a humanitarian for 2 years. Give up being a Flash. Perfect.
Yeah. Just whatever it takes. Just give us a good Wally West story where this beloved character isn't an irredeemable murderer.
Also, I would love it if there were no more Speed Force like dong measuring contests between him and Barry Allen.
Yeah.
Barry Allen, like Wally West is your nephew. You two love each other. You've saved the world time and over again together. You probably don't need to try to figure out who's fast. You're both exceptionally fast.
Yeah, it's very stupid. It was cute like the first time Superman and the Flash had a race back in I think it was 1969. It was a Jim Shooter Superman issue. But it's like, okay, fine. And then you have a Barry and
charm.
Yeah. It's like, I get having a Barry and Wally race. That's fine. No more. It's over. Stop.
Yeah. So I know. I think that'll basically do it with how we would, fix Wally West. I think we did a good job kind of going through the history of Wally West, how we kind of got here, what I thought were some of the bigger issues.
Yeah.
I don't think you pretty much agree. There wasn't anything else that you needed to talk about that was a real hindrance for the character right now. I forgot to ask you.
No, I mean, that's it. I just want a Wally West where nobody dies.
Hey, going right back to, was that Wally or Flash? Was it 35? Which one was it?
54 is
54.
When, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nobody dies.
Nobody dies.
All right, Joe, I really appreciate you coming on here, having a good time. I hope people enjoy this. Next time we're gonna do another Marvel character.
Yeah, I think we can come up with one. I don't think it'll be too hard.
It shouldn't be too hard, and we'll always open to viewer suggestions. So if there's a Marvel character you want Joe and I to put our heads together and see if we can fix them, we'd love to hear from you. And we'll definitely be doing this again next week.
Yeah, sounds great.